All right, so let's continue the discussion around economic matters now. And most analysts agreeing with the Statistician-General, saying that the South African economy is not out of the woods just yet, despite the gradual growth. This is in reaction to the 1.2% hike in the gross domestic product for the fourth quarter of 2021. This is with industries that saw a decline in the third quarter, contraction improving slightly. Now, our business reporter, Tumisang Ndlovu, is in studio with me, and she is going to help us understand what to make of these numbers. Tumisang, very good morning to you. So we're doing the business segment a little differently today, particularly after such stellar performance, if I could use those words. And I say that because there's a 4.9% performance in the overall economy as I read papers today. And apparently these are figures that were not seen even before the 2007-2008 period. That's when the country was performing at phenomenal figures. But this figure was not seen even at that time. This was before the global economic crisis. But give us the overall picture of what the sentiment is around these figures that we saw being released yesterday.
That's correct, Polly, and in context, one has to use the word modest because we are basing the South African economy in terms of growth, going back to where the trajectory is not necessarily growth that can be compared with other developing countries. And of course, that would stem from the historic issues of inequality, poverty, as well as unemployment. So if we put that in relation to economic growth in South Africa, what exactly does it translate to? 1.2% of growth in the fourth quarter is good for sectorial performance. But if we look at the lived experience of an ordinary South African, even the 350 grants are becoming unsustainable in terms of feasibility for affordability of the rising cost of living. 4.9% that you reference of economic growth over the year of 2021, it is good. It's good news. It's great. However, when we look at the structural economic challenges, not necessarily speaking to the ordinary South African. If you and I cannot afford the cost of living in South Africa, how then do we foster an environment of money circulating in the market? And that too speaks to economic growth in South Africa. We cannot have economic growth on paper, whereas the lived experience is not translating into economic participation. That fosters inequality and the further perpetuation of exclusion.
Let's talk specific sectors, therefore. The Statistician-General yesterday saying that it's not usual that you hear the Statistician-General being upbeat about the numbers that he gives out. But he specifically went there yesterday to say that he is upbeat and specifically making mention of the agricultural sector, which he said sort of led this performance, this good performance, if you like. Give us the sectors that helped us to get to the figures that we got yesterday, but what are the worrying signs?
Agriculture, the shining light in this data, and I think what got many excited with the performance of agriculture is that we are seeing subsistence farming becoming a way of living in South Africa just to counter the effects of the rising cost of food that we are seeing in our stores. So that sector needs that structural economic reform that is needed to bolster the activity in that industry. Mining, unfortunately, we are seeing a little bit of a dwindle there, but it had been a shining light prior to the figures of the fourth quarter being released. Of course, we know the commodities boom globally has also dwindled, and that is just an effect of how the mining industry is performing. Unfortunately, we are in stage 4 of load shedding. We are in the dark. That is a serious concern, solely because the mining industry is very reliant on electricity. So is manufacturing. Manufacturing performed slightly better than the mining industry. Both of them have been on par in terms of positive performance. But when the entrance of load shedding comes back into the reality of the South African economy, in labor-intensive structures with unemployment in the country, it means production is likely to decrease. When production decreases, what happens to these operations? Does it mean that we can maintain jobs going forward? It's a brand new year. The first quarter of 2022 is definitely not going to look like what the fourth quarter is showing in terms of data. I say that solely because we have also the global issues. Inflation, global inflation, not just on the domestic front. Food inflation is a concern, as well as the geopolitical matters with Russia and Ukraine, and that speaks to Brent crude oil. We are buying it in dollars. Therefore, food price inflation. Therefore, the petrol pumps. And we're already above that 21 rand a litre of petrol. How do we survive?
And I saw one headline today to say, which read, I think it was the Citizen newspaper, warning that to be worried about the availability of fuel. We're wrapping it up, and I'd like to touch on the one area. I wonder whether you are going to allow yourself to go there. The mining sector, always counted as one of those that do perform better than expected. There's one CEO, though, in that sector who did not mince his words, quoted in the certain media yesterday, saying that South Africa is a failed state. I'm talking about Neil Froneman, the CEO of Sibanye-Stillwater, and he counts a number of issues that are at play that make him say this, and included in there is the issue of lawlessness. And so I wonder what his sentiments are going to be, given that we are on stage 4 load shedding that you have spoken about. We also are in the grips of this geopolitical instability with the Russia-Ukraine. As we wrap it up then, give us the near-term outlook of South Africa's GDP performance.
Like I said initially, Xoli, analysts are expecting modest growth. And when you reference role players in industries such as CEOs of mining companies, it becomes a concern in that the business sentiment is not boding well for South Africa to be sold as an investment destination. We know that the presidency has been on a drive to have South Africa advertised as exactly that. How do we do that when we have rolling blackouts? As a country that is meant to be developing faster and being a leader in the pack on the continent, how then do we attract investment if we have load shedding, Eskom, the unsustainability of power being a hindrance to economic growth? If we do not have economic growth, then we are unable to address the issues of job creation, even just in the sector of the SME industry. Think of a restaurant as an example. If you are running a restaurant, the cost of a generator is on you. That cost of a generator does not come cheap. The petrol price has escalated to levels that we've never seen before. And at the same time, if you are driving foot traffic in your restaurant, as an example, post-COVID-19, we still have consumers who are saying, maybe I'm not too comfortable with that. So where are you generating the money to keep those jobs, pay the salaries that you have, and then load shedding strikes?
Tumisang Ndlovu, you've explained it all too well. I understand exactly where we are. Thank you very much for that update.